Today I'm going to be talking about NGOs, non-governmental systems. I'm going to be highlighting two, which is MSF, so Médecins Sans Frontières, hopefully I pronounced that right. It's just Doctors Without Borders in French. And also CBM, so that's Christian Blind Mission. So I'm going to be comparing both of them, talking about vision and mission statements and what theological and approaches they have, but also the motivators they have that underline each of them. So you've already heard what an NGO is. It's a non-governmental organisation. What does that look like? Well, that looks like, to put it in a dictionary definition, an organisation that goes and seeks to help in areas that are having political turmoil or social turmoil or have some issues in that regard, and they want to do it in such a way where they're not tied to governments or political agendas, anything like that. They just want to go in and try and help. So before going any further in our discussion about these two NGOs, MSF and CBM, I'd like to introduce them respectively. So MSF is an organisation that seeks to provide medical aid in areas that are affected by armed conflict, epidemics, famines, or natural disasters. Currently, MSF is involved in 70 countries. Afghanistan, Ethiopia, and Iraq are just a few to be named. And MSF is Australia-based, and they've also been around since 1971. CBM's organisation is an organisation that's built on the love of Jesus and the inclusion of Jesus. And so they go after the people in the poorest countries that are disabled and without help, and they try to bring that help and that inclusion and that love to these people. They are Australian based, and they've also been around for 110 years. To speak any further of these organisations as an NGO and bringing forth change, we actually need to talk about their vision statements. So vision in the sense of the goals and aspirations that they have. So a vision statement, its definition is as simple as what an organisation aspires to be. So with MSF, they aspire to save lives providing medical aid in areas of conflict, epidemics, famines, and natural disasters. On the other hand, CBM, their vision statement states that they want an inclusive world. They aspire to see an inclusive world in which all people with disability enjoy their human rights and achieve their full potential. Now, these two are vastly different, but they still are at the same goal at the end, to bring about social change in the means of human rights. Now I want to stop on this moment right now and just compare the two vision statements to kind of tease out what I feel the organisations are focusing towards. So MSF, they talk about going after places that are distressed, that are in conflict, there's epidemics, there's natural disasters. On the other hand, CBM, they talk about the person that they're going after, that they want to bring about change in that person's life. They want to see all these people renewed to their fullest potential. So I want to suggest at this point, just looking at the vision statements, that MSF has a focus towards the areas, and CBM has more of a focus towards the people involved and bringing about their fullness. Now, we're going to look at their mission statements. Their mission statements are a continuation of what their vision statements aspire to be, but in the sense that they're practical and they define how they're going to go about it and how they do go about achieving their vision statement. So there's a lot more to be said in a mission statement. So like I already said, mission statements express the purpose of an organisation and the reason the organisation exists. So they go a step further than the vision and they show what that looks like practically in the organisation. MSF's mission statement states they provide medical assistance to people affected by conflict, epidemics, disasters, or exclusion from healthcare. CBM, on the other hand, says that they are an international Christian development organisation committed to improving the quality of life of persons with disability in the poorest countries of the world. Now, comparing these two mission statements and also comparing them to the vision statements, I first want to say that MSF has almost redirected their vision, and instead of being directed by the area, the conflict, they've said that they are going after the people that are in these conflicts. So where their vision states that they exist to provide medical assistance in areas of conflict, their mission statement says it differently. They say that they go for the people that are in these areas. CBM's mission statement continues on from their vision. It keeps the same general conclusion and focus, which is that they're going to help people who are disabled, who aren't open to opportunities, so they're in the poorer countries, to fulfill their fullest potential. Now, CBM's mission statement, I will say, in mentioning that they are trying to bring people to their fullest potential, leaves the bounds open. So where MSF has given a focus towards medical aid, CBM has left it open to say we're going after fulfilling a person's role to their fullest potential. So then they can be, in their mission statement at least, they can be more involved in more activities in bringing people to a social change, bringing a social reform in a positive manner. Now, where both of these NGOs bring their vision and mission statements to the forefront is in their practice. So practice is exactly what it says. It's the idea that what do they do on the field? What is the practical element to their vision and mission statements? So MSF, they practice providing medical care to quote unquote people who need it. Now, they do it in a non-discriminant way, and they have a high regard for not being associated with religious views, with governments, with any political powers. So much so that they actually don't take funds from the government. Even though they're based in Australia, they don't even take funds from our government. They are more willing to accept donations from just personal people that don't necessarily have a hold on power, and by doing that they don't have to prove or work for some political agenda. So it goes through their whole organisation. Now with MSF, they pride themselves on this idea that we're talking about, which is neutrality. So they're neutral to all political ideas, to religious views, to any views really besides helping someone and the core human needs. And they say that in the end, all that matters is that there's human beings in need. So MSF's practice is almost a double-edged sword, because they are neutral and pride themselves in that as much as they need to. And beyond that, they follow this idea of témoignage, hopefully I pronounced that right, means to witness. And it was birthed out of a revolt from silent diplomacy, which was practiced by a lot of NGOs, and still is actually still practiced by a lot of NGOs, where the idea is we won't talk about anything we've experienced or seen or our ideas about the scenarios, because we might burn the bridges that get us into that place to help, and we might not be able to go in the future and help again. So MSF saw this as not helpful, and they saw that it was actually aiding the continuation of the conflicts that they were trying to aid and fix. So they're neutral, but they also witness. So they put it this way. They say that they're free to speak out and witness about the issues at hand, both publicly to bring about awareness and change, and privately. So CBM's approach to their practice really follows after Jesus' mission of inclusion, justice, hope, and love. And they really seek to change the local communities in a lot of different ways. So on the ground level, they will come in as a medical stance to aid and heal treatable diseases. So things that could be controlled and stopped, both for the short term and the long term. And they also they do that in a way where they actually partner with the local communities and the organisations around, and even the NGOs that are involved in that area. CBM's work also branches out to the systems and the general social climate of the area too, in the sense that they want to bring about change on a broader spectrum. So where they're working on the ground to bring medical aid and transforming these people to actually fulfill their fullest potential, they do that also in the social sphere. So CBM actually at least attempt to influence the local communities and political powers that live and exist inside that area, so that they would include the disabled, the people that they're trying to aid. They want to not only see them healed in a sense of their health, but they also want to see them restored into the community. And so they go about it by encouraging the governments, the local communities and the local powers to have systems in place that include these people back into the community. And this is very similar to MSF's view of witnessing. So both NGOs want to bring an influence into the area, but more than just the medical aid of the here and now. They also want to bring changes to structure and aid in including and transforming people to full health in both a body and social manner. Now, both of these NGOs have implicit and explicit theological motivators and motivators in general that drive their practice, their vision and their mission. So we've talked about each of the NGO's different vision statement, mission statement and their practices. And now going on from there, I want to talk about the motivators that will inform what we've talked about. So MSF hold a few motivators that inform their work. These include their witness, which we've talked about already, where they come out of a silent diplomacy and into social reform. They also have a policy of having no weapons in their areas where they are bringing aid. They also prioritise the most serious in danger people to be served first. And lastly, of course, they have the policy which we've talked about of neutrality. So we're going to talk about those a little bit right now. The motivator of witness by MSF is generally pretty positive overall. The idea that they're going to speak out about things that previous NGOs or current NGOs are silent about sounds awesome. But I feel that it can also leave the possibility for harm. So where they've come to try and bring aid and to speak on behalf of other people, they can at times grossly oversimplify and misinterpret the cultural context of the place and try and bring a social reform, but out of the context and out of the situation in a kind of a westernized view, and that can cause a lot of harm. So all in all, the witness statement that they bring is greatly good, but it leaves the gap open for potentially oversimplifying culture and trying to bring a Western view of good into that area. MSF's non-weapons policy plays in part with their last policy of witness, in that its downfall is assuming a context. And so, while being overly positive in the approach of having no weapons available in those areas, it could harm in the sense that maybe a culture, they feel the need to have guns there to feel that they are protected, to feel that they have a defensive stance, but not necessarily for the offensive version of taking them to kill people. MSF's view of prioritising the most immediate in danger to help them first, it also lacks, while it's a good idea to try and help those that are in the most danger first, or we see in the most danger first, it comes back to what we're seeing. And in a lot of cultures where the Western view is maybe the medical and the physical first, there's a religious aspect that you're lacking in assuming that, because there are a lot of people that are outcast due to religious affiliations to medical afflictions, and they perhaps need to be prioritised first before those we see in immediate danger. Now, having said all this about the first few motivators, I'm going to talk about the different theological motivators that MSF has, or the lack thereof. So, we've talked about how there is different climates, different cultures and contexts that need to be played into, and I feel that that is something that maybe MSF is lacking, for they assume a worldwide view of medical intelligence and knowledge. And so I'd like to just recite a quote from MSF's website. The dialogue goes like this. I remember one day in a 45-degree tent, everyone literally dripping with sweat, person after person clamouring for mental health support from them or other families. That day I diagnosed a young man with his first presentation of psychotic illness, convincing his devastated mum and dad that he wasn't possessed by a genie. That medication might help, and that things could be okay for them, he said. Now, in this quote, MSF's not highlighting any cultural context or anything like that, but it's just a general dialogue for what they provide in their areas. Now, for me, reading this, it really displayed how MSF's view of religious involvement in their aid is lacking. So, they display responsibility towards the aid and the medical advancement of the culture, but they are a bit blatant in disregard for the religious. So, where this gentleman has said that he was convincing the family that the other patient wasn't possessed by a genie, is probably not the best approach. For you need to be a bit more sensitive towards what they believe and what they see. For potentially we can see, okay, that was perhaps ill-informed or wrong, but to them it's true, and we need to come to their level, come to their context, and be humble in our approach and willing to help them through it, rather than to just provide our help from the top down. So, talking about MSF's different motivators, I want to talk now about CBM's motivators. CBM's motivators are 100% theological. Why I say that is because CBM is a Christian organisation, and they pride themselves in following after the example of Jesus. And so their first and foremost motivator is love. Okay, so they want to bring the love of God to the world, and they do that through showing justice, inclusion, and aid to all these people with disabilities in the poorer countries. Now, I don't see this as having a downfall, as it is one-sided and subjective in that it is one view of the truth, but their motivators don't overtly show Christian aspects as much as they show a universal emotion of love, which is something that all religions, all races, all cultures join in to enjoy and share. So I feel that CBM has come at their motivator in a positive manner to bring out something that isn't tied down to a religious view. On the other hand, CBM's vision of following after Jesus Christ's example can lead to having a heightened sense of self-righteousness and a righteous opinion, where the focus of social justice becomes about salvation, and where the organisation that was bringing aid to one area could quickly become widened in its view and lose sight of the individual and the different cases of each people involved. So to summarise, in this video we've talked about NGOs, what they are, two different NGOs being MSF and CBM, what each of them bring to the plate, so their introductions, their vision and mission statements, their practices, and then lastly we spoke about their theological motivators and the different other motivators that they have underlying the whole workings of their organisations. And we compared throughout this discussion between CBM and MSF. Not saying that one is better than the other, but just giving a comparison and a contrast between two different NGOs in a similar field. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope that this was insightful and enjoyable. Thank you.